If you grew up in the 1980s and the 1990s all the way to the 2000s and then led an adult life in the 2010s and 20s, you can absolutely relate to this. There was a moment in time where everything seemed magical. During the times of Hulk Hogan, the red and the yellow, the Hulk Hogan ice cream, the Ultimate Warrior action figures, the G.I. Joes, things of this nature. Everything seemed pure, everything seemed real, or was it? And then next thing you know, the realities of the harsh adulthood came and creeped into our lives, washing away all the beautiful memories that we remembered as a kid with simpler times. And if you understand exactly what I'm saying to you, you will understand this video in a nutshell. The 1980s, the 1990s seemed like a simpler time for many multitudes of reasons. One of those reasons is because we could distinguish between the good guys and the bad guys. You remember the Cold War? Everybody was so convinced that the United States was good and the USSR was bad. Now, obviously, all countries are bad and all countries are good in their own way. Let's try and understand that. But when you had somebody like Hulk Hogan, who represented America, then you had somebody like Iron Sheik, who was playing, obviously, a character of an Iranian national who hates the United States, but in reality was actually a real-life Iranian wrestler who represented Iran. That's neither here or there. That is a political topic for another time. What I'm talking to you about right now is your childhood memories and how it coincides with the reality of Hulk Hogan. For example, when he became Hulk Hogan NWO, what happened? When that happened, Hulk Hogan became a disenfranchised, wannabe good guy, wannabe goody two-shoe, and became this hardened biker gang leader criminal, which, by the way, is what he was depicted as when he was the leader of the NWO. Hence the name Hollywood Hulk Hogan, because he fits the role of that super villain bad guy to the max. And at the same time, he was also the greatest good guy ever. Very similar to how America is. You see, in some parts of the world, America is seen as the good guys. In some parts of the world, America is seen as the ultimate bad guys. But nonetheless, that is coincided with the reality of Hulk Hogan, not only in his on-screen life, but also in his life outside of the ring and what he has depicted himself to be as both the good guy and the bad guy in both those contrasting years of his career. Well, now that Hulk Hogan is gone, I think we can speak from an Islamic perspective and say that this life is short. This life is just a journey that passes you by. This guy was the biggest icon during our generation, and quite honestly, one of the most recognizable names and figures that we can remember within our childhood memories. Somewhere down the line, the joys of childhood, the innocence of childhood, got replaced with the ideas of having to pay your bills, having to keep up with your mortgage, on top of the fact that you had to worry about the things that you never had to worry about as an adult. And then you can look at that from the difference between the boomers and how they were able to buy a house for, let's say, less than 100 grand, maybe even 30 grand. And now the very minimum, most houses are $500,000. I'm talking about like decent houses that are one level, maybe 2 rooms. We're talking $500,000 in a good city. That's what you would find. But back in the days, everything seemed good. Everything seemed like, you know what, everything was working. It was the way that it was. Everything that seemed fair is no longer fair in that particular light. That is just the world that we are living in today. Also, if you really want to talk about how innocent times were back then, think about this, right? The Iraq War. 2 different contrasting eras, right? 2003 and 1991. What is the difference? In 1991, you had a clear enemy. Okay, you remember Sergeant Slaughter when he defected to the Iraqis just to fight Hulk Hogan? That was a clear enemy, and it was a clear operation. Go in there, take out the bad guys, this, that, and the other, and then we're out of there. Next thing you know, we're now in an era where, let's say, 2003, right? The Iraq war invasion. What happened? Wasn't so simple, was it? Now you're stuck in there a couple of decades later trying to mitigate all the tribal issues that were going on there. The world got complex. That is the next thing that I'm going to talk to you about. How the world got complex and how the world was simple back then, especially in the days when Hulk Hogan was at his prime. Without having to go through the chronological order of Hulk Hogan's career, the one thing that we can take from that is back then it were much simpler times, and now we're living in more complicated times. His career, his life, the way that he was big during the reality show era of the Jersey Shore and the Kardashians and whatever reality show was going on in the mid-2000s, he embodied all of that. He embodied every single part of that in every generation that he was a part of, but he also embodied the joyness of simpler times in the 80s and 90s, and also the complicated times in which he has lived today. And look at the way that he died. I'm going to tell you from an Islamic point of view of understanding life and understanding the trajectory of one's life in this dunya as you transition into the afterlife. It really brings a grim, humble reality to how a lot of people die. You see, many people are making jokes about Hulk Hogan dying right now because of the fact that he was canceled. Now, is it warranted in any kind of way? My answer, I don't know. That's for you to decide. I'm just here as a reporter giving you the news, giving you the content and everything in between. So don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope that I gave you a great monologue regarding Hulk Hogan and how he relates to the generations that have lived through his greatness and that have witnessed it, but also correlating how their life has changed along with Hulk Hogan's life in the era that we are now facing in, as opposed to much happier times than before. With that in mind, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one, inshallah.